Welcome back to the Kosi Arsenal channel. My name is Kosi. Welcome back to a brand new video. There is fire on the mountain when it comes to the Martin Zubimendi deal. But I can tell you that Arsenal are 100% signing Martin Zubimendi, and that is not changing. And that has been collaborated by the best guys in town. That is David Ornstein and Sky Sports Danish chef. Let's talk about Martin Zubimendi. Why are Arsenal under threat on this deal? Are Real Madrid really trying to get the deal done before Arsenal can sign him in the summer? And can any club come and sabotage our deal? Hit that button, subscribe to the channel as well. This is the latest and the whole truth on the Martin Zubimendi deal. Now, recently, there's been a lot of talk around the situation. Real Madrid coming in and they're saying they want to get him. They're saying they're willing to trigger the release clause of the player, which is around 60 million euros. Now, when it comes to the release clause, anyone can trigger that. It's not only Arsenal. We don't have a copyright on that. And so Madrid are saying that if he's available this summer, we're going to try and get him. But in order for you to trigger the release clause of the player, you've got to agree past the terms. And this is where this deal really depends on the management of the player and the player himself. Despite the fact that Madrid have the 60 million, if the player doesn't agree to join them, then their money doesn't make any sense. So the situation is a little bit tense. A couple of reports earlier on have been pointing to Zubimendi leaning towards Real Madrid. But one thing I said yesterday, and I've already said when I saw those reports, none of them is coming from a very credible source. None of them was coming from Sky, none of them was coming from Fabrizio, and none of them was coming from David Ornstein. And little did I know that in the last 2 hours, I was going to receive confirmation that Arsenal already considered the Martin Zubimendi a done deal. And I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to give you all the evidence that Real Madrid are not really leading this race. They're in there and they're interested like any other club can be, but they're not ahead of Arsenal in this deal. So what is really going on? What is going on is Arsenal went in January and negotiated a deal for Martin Zubimendi, and I reported that very clearly on this channel. It was the first video we did and it was well received. Now, Arsenal negotiating a deal with him meant that we got an agreement in principle, a verbal agreement in principle, that the player will join us in the summer if nothing changes. We also went and talked to Real Sociedad. Real Sociedad really have less power in this, but why Arsenal negotiated with Real Sociedad was we wanted to overcome the release clause. We wanted to pay a little bit more, possibly 70 million, possibly 80 million euros, depending on the agreement, but do not pay the release clause. And the reason for that, Arsenal looking to spend a lot of money this summer. You can't spend 60 million euros at once. It's a little bit crazy. So what Arsenal decided is, can we pay 70 million for Martin Zubimendi, but spread that payment across 3 years, maybe 4 years? It's a little bit favorable. If you're looking at the likes of Alexander Isak, Victor Gyökeres, Nico Williams, it's going to be a big summer and it's going to cost a lot of money. So I think what clubs are trying to understand here is we can hijack the deal. And what clubs are trying to do is they're trying to hijack the deal that Arsenal has already done. Right? Arsenal have already agreed a deal with Sociedad. We have already agreed a deal with Martin Zubimendi. And all the other clubs in the world have just been notified that he is available and we can get him. Now, when it comes to Real Madrid, they're not the only club interested and they're not the only club monitoring the situation of the player and Arsenal. They're not the only one. Last summer, Liverpool wanted to get Martin Zubimendi and they were very close. I mean, they were willing to pay about 60 million euros or even above, but the player decided to stay at Real Sociedad and assess his options this summer. And before we could get to the summer, Arsenal went and talked to the player in January and we convinced him to join us. So the situation is still very clear as day, as clear as it was in January. Arsenal leading the race. Arsenal have a verbal agreement with the player and Arsenal have a verbal agreement with Real Sociedad, and Real Madrid have not overtaken us, and no other club at the moment, not even FC Barcelona, who believe they have Martin Zubimendi as their next Sergio Busquets, ahead of Arsenal in this deal. But you don't have to believe me for it. Let's get into the quotes from David Ornstein, who confirmed yesterday that he doesn't have any information about Madrid overtaking Arsenal, and if there is any information like that, it has not reached his ears at the moment. So he said yesterday, without wanting to discredit the reporting of others, I personally haven't heard of this. Arsenal are expecting Zubimindi to join this summer. I don't know if that means it's completely done, but for some time now, they've been working on the deal on the basis that he will be coming in, and a huge amount of work went in trying to get the player at that point. While Edu was still in that position as sporting director, and subsequently when Jason Ato took over on that interim basis, Arsenal have been working on this deal. Andre Bata will be starting soon as Edu's permanent successor, so we are hopeful to learn a bit more about that and other areas in due course as well. So that is David Ornstein confirming there that Arsenal are really leading this race. Arsenal put in a lot of work, and he says he's not certain whether the deal and the agreement we have in January means that the deal is already done. But he says at the moment, it is expected that he will join. Arsenal expect him to be our player, and that has not changed. I mean, David Ornstein, when it comes to Arsenal reporting, is one of the best, if not the best. I know many of you don't like Fabrizio, but Fabrizio is definitely high up there on the list as well. So with that report from David Ornstein, we can pick a few points. Number one, he doesn't want to discredit the reporting of others, but he hasn't heard anything around Real Madrid and Martin Zubimendi, especially being that it's being said it's very close. Now, the reports coming in from sources are also a little bit credible. There is Rudy Galetti, who has been there for quite some time, and there is Graham Bailey, one of the journalists that I've been following for quite some time as well as an Arsenal content creator. I'm not trying to say these guys have all of a sudden become bad journalists because they're reporting a deal away from Arsenal. I'm just saying David Ornstein is better. He's a little bit more credible and a little bit more informed. But if you don't believe David Ornstein, that's okay. What about if we went in and got Sky Sports as a source? What are they saying? According to Damesh Sheth, one of the real good reporters at Sky, he says, I would say Martin Zubimendi to Arsenal is almost definitely going to happen. When you look back now to this transfer window, Liverpool were all set to sign him. And there was a late change of heart. Was there a late intervention by Arsenal? Possibly, possibly not. It was him who changed his mind in the last minute. And when you consider whether Arsenal had come in or and said, "Look, we want to bring you in now, but we desperately want you." Mikel Arteta knows him really, really well, and maybe he just thought, "I'll just bide my time for the time being. I actually want to go to Arsenal." So that's according to Sky Sports, being reported by Damesh Sheth. When you look at these two reports, they actually have something in common. They both believe, and these are very credible reporters, but both of them believe Arsenal are very, very confident and we are in the driving seat for Martin Zubimendi. Now, Liverpool wanted him, but according to Damesh Sheth, there was a late change of heart. Arsenal went in there and told the player, "We want you. You can buy yourself some time, but if you really want to play for a team that really believes in you and a manager that has looked at you for quite some time, Arsenal is your destination." So for me, however much people want to convince me, however much people want to tell me that Madrid is big and therefore they're taking Martin Zubimendi away from Arsenal, I don't think so. Now, this is also why I think this deal is going to happen. And we will talk about the vulnerability of the deal as well. But this is why I think the deal will happen. Number one, Arsenal are renowned now for working on deals a little bit earlier on rather than panic. Now, last summer was a little bit different and it was peculiar and it was bad. I mean, if you look at the outcome of last summer, Mikel Merino, Ricardo Calafiori and Raheem Sterling, that is one of those summers where your team has really performed poorly. And I cannot give an excuses for that. It was because we didn't plan earlier. But when we move a little bit back, 2 years, 3 years earlier on, when Arsenal signed the key targets that we wanted, Julian Timber, Declan Rice, Ben White, Martin Odegaard, It shows you that Arsenal always prepare and they know who they want and they start working on deals a little bit early ever since we got Edu and Mikel Arteta. And that is an advantage, of course. So this is very similar to those situations. When we tried to sign Gabriel Jesus, it was reported early in January. It happened. When we tried to sign Declan Rice, it was reported early in January. It happened. And maybe the Alexander Isak deal too. I'm just saying. But the Martin Zubimendi one is definitely happening. Arsenal have not only agreed a deal or have not only expressed interest in the player earlier on enough, but we have done a lot of work. We have put a lot of effort in this deal right up until this time, and we don't expect it to go wrong. Now, there's a question that I've been asking myself when I was researching here, this video, and probably writing. What about Bruno Guimaraes? There is a strong link to Arsenal, and of course Bruno Guimaraes is a player that has been linked with Arsenal right from last summer. You remember David Ornstein saying that he can't rule out a move for Bruno Guimaraes to Arsenal, and that was last summer. Now, this summer, or before this summer, the reports that are coming in are not coming in from credible sources as well. And I think the Bruno Guimaraes deal has been fueled as part of people believing that Arsenal won't be getting Martin Zubimendi. I think a few sources have decided to write alternatives for Arsenal if we don't get Martin Zubimendi. Or there is another alternative way of looking at this. Could Arsenal be looking to sign both Martin Zubimendi and Bruno Guimaraes in one summer? Now, although Mikel Arteta is one of those, really, really good managers, he's really defensive too, and very defensive. And I wouldn't really put it past him to go out in the market, get another defender and add to his backline, get two defensive midfielders, and make sure that his midfield is secure. He already has Mikel Merino, he already has Declan Rice, but I won't be surprised if he feels a little bit lightweight with the loss of Partey and the loss of Jorginho. Now, I really want us to get one of the two because we're going to be working with kind of a limited budget and there's a lot to cover. The attack is going to be, needing a lot of attention with wingers, strikers, and possibly backups for those positions, and then the midfield too. So if Bruno Guimaraes is coming in as a different deal, as a separate deal, I'm afraid Arsenal might not be getting an attacking midfielder, and that is going to worry me until the end of next season. But I think the thing we have clarified right now is that the Bruno Guimaraes deal is not being quoted as a replacement or alternative to Martin Zubimendi. It could be a deal Arsenal are trying to do under Andrea Barta on its own. So we might see Bruno Guimaraes, Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, and Martin Odegaard as Arsenal players. I would really love to have that, but I just feel like there is an attacking midfielder missing somewhere. And if Arsenal could sign Bruno Guimaraes and Martin Zubimendi and add a player like Ryan Sharkey or add a player like maybe Famin from Barcelona, I would be 100% on board with that. So the Martin Zubimendi deal, is it done? Is it under jeopardy? What should we conclude with? First, I'm going to say, Arsenal putting a lot of background work on the player and also him being a long-term target, we are safe. We are very, very safe. I know Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. When we decide to go for players these days, they're players that have really good virtues of honesty and virtues of being principled. And I think Martin Zubimendi as a player, he's kind of principled. Now, of course, he has changed his heart before from Liverpool to, I'm going to stay. But that doesn't mean Arsenal should be worried. Maybe everything happened too fast. I mean, he's a player that is really invested with Real Sociedad. He looked at his team losing Mikel Merino and he said, I really don't want to leave my club in the midfield lightweight. So I'm going to stay for 1 year since we're losing Mikel Merino. And then as we find replacements, I will move on. But I also think that as a player, he has a very good connection with Mikel Arteta, and that puts us in a very good position. However, it is not over. And I'm sorry, yeah, it happens. Transfers are transfers. The first thing that I want to say is clubs are going to keep pushing. Martin Zubimendi, right now on the market, is one of the best, if not the best, defensive midfielders you can think about. And Arsenal going in early in January to try and get the deal done, it shows you we are not desperate as a club. We're just trying to cover ourselves and are trying to be a little bit prudent and safe and smart. So I think Liverpool will push for him. I think Madrid might push for him, especially if they think they're losing Camavinga to Manchester City or if they're losing one of Tchouameni and Valverde. So I think Zubi is going to be wanted by a couple of clubs, and I won't be surprised if a club like Madrid, if a club like Barcelona really try to push him. But at the moment, he's safely an Arsenal player. Now, the other trigger that Arsenal really have to think about is the release clause. Release clauses are very tricky, and the ones in La Liga are actually trickier. The player can be signed by triggering a release clause, and that release clause can be triggered with La Liga, not with the player. So Real Sociedad can be called right now or at any time that the release clause of the player becomes active by maybe Madrid, maybe Arsenal, by anyone, and say, hello, we have triggered the release clause of the player. We are now asking for permission to talk to him on personal terms. That is how difficult release clauses are. So until it's over, Arsenal are going to be panicking because release clauses are always release clauses. And finally, I'm going to say, according to the situation and according to the reports that we've got today, Martin Zubimendi for me is an Arsenal player. And until anything happens that proves otherwise, he's going to be the replacement for Jorginho and the replacement for Thomas Partey until either the deal doesn't happen or Arsenal sign another alternative. Thank you for watching. I love you. See you soon.